Chief Executive Greg Wallace from Master Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers New Zealand is with us. Good evening, sir. Thank you for giving us some time.
Thank you for having me, Pat.
I understand those losers from 7 Sharp have been bothering you today. Is that right? I mean,
yeah, there's been a bit of so it's Lead Awareness Week. So there's been a bit of media attention this week.
Yeah, explain that to me, because to be honest, look, I'll bring this up for the viewing public. International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week. Never heard of it before. Don't know anything about it. But I saw an article that you're cited in the ODT here in Dunedin, talking about flushing taps urged to avoid lead poisoning, and there is quite a bit of conversation around the country at the moment about pipes for New Zealand. Let's say, just to coin a phrase, 3 kinds of pipes and the water held within. Yes. Something like that. And so obviously this sparked an interest in me, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons it sparked an interest in many. But before we kind of get into that, meaning your aspect of it is purely about the, I guess, logistics of the pipes, maybe rather than the legislation, which is why we've got you here about the practical side of it rather than necessarily the legislative side of it. What the heck is International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week, and what do we know about it? Tell us about the week, first of all.
Well, the week is just about making sure the importance of removing lead from communities is recognised. Now, you take New Zealand, 1969, I think it was, we got rid of lead in paint. You remember the old batches, I'm sure that you've scraped back and sanded and, old grandma's place with the lead paint. And then in the 1980s, we got rid of lead in petrol. We're now in 2022, Pat, and we still have lead leaching into our drinking water. So I just don't know if we've quite got the priorities right. I think New Zealanders expect they go to a tap, there's drinking water that tastes well and it's safe. And the reality is that's not always the case.
Yeah.
You're from the deep south, and obviously Waitawiti was the probably a couple of years ago where we had people filling their tankers because they couldn't boil the kettle at home, or they couldn't take a drink out of the tap, because it was proven some of the plumbing fittings and some of the infrastructure was leaching lead into the drinking water. And so we've always used this week as a reminder of some of these councils need to get off their arse and actually do something that they're actually elected for, and to provide safe infrastructure. Now, I will add, Pat, that some of the plumbing products, which your kitchen taps, they haven't been perfect either. And so particularly some of the cheaper brands have used a higher lead content in the manufacturing. And that means when the water passes through those taps, they can leach lead into the drinking water as well.
So even if the pipes for let's say a new subdivision were good, or the pipes from the reservoir to the house were good, you're saying that even the units within the house, if they're bad taps, they could also actually leach lead into our drinking water.
Yeah, so currently the New Zealand regulations on the building code don't require those products that deal with drinking water to be lead free. And the reality is it is often cheaper to manufacture with higher lead content. Now, I'm not saying all of the taps do that, and that wouldn't be the case at all, but we've tested across New Zealand in a variety of locations, and we've found they have leached lead, particularly when you're storing water overnight. Now, the ESR put out a statement this week saying they recommend for all consumers to flush the taps for at least 30 seconds before using it every day. We know that doesn't happen. That's just not reality.
Yeah. And look, to be honest, I'd never heard that before, and that sounds like a third world country.
Yeah.
Sounds like a third world country. Like I grew up in the top half of the North Island, and we had water tanks where I spent my summers and stuff, and we knew that we'd have to address our water issue slightly differently from being on town water. But to say that and I've actually highlighted it up here, the Ministry of Health recommendation to flush 2 cups of water from their cold tap each morning before drinking sounds like we have a drinking infrastructure from the 1920s.
Yeah,
it's kind of terrifying.
I couldn't agree more. And the reality is 2 cups might not be enough. And Pat, the reality is 2 cups What's 2 cups? What size is that? Where's the measurement? Is that going to reduce the lead? What it's going to do is maybe mitigate the situation. It's not going to remove all the lead. So it's not a strategy that is well understood, and it's not reality. It's not done. And so if you've got the Ministry of Health using that as a mechanism to keep New Zealand safe, I think we're lacking a bit in common sense.
How do we, like, let's say I've one of our co-hosts here, Chewy, has recently started doing up his bathroom in his kitchen. How does he go into whatever store he buys his taps and stuff from and get the ones that don't have a lead component, should that be a concern for him?
So that's the bloody problem. There isn't any legislation to require that. So in Australia, they have a system called watermark. And watermark means any plumbing product that's sold has to go through an independent third-party verification. Gets a little W stamp put on it and a code that you can look up on our website. In New Zealand, we don't require that at all. We're completely deregulated. So Pat, tomorrow you could go onto a Chinese website, import a 20-foot container of taps and pump them on Trade Me and sell them. Now, when the plumber installs them, he's got some responsibility under the Plumbing, Drainlaying and Gasfitting Act that he must provide you with safe. But it's impossible for him to know either. He's not a scientist. He can't break down the product. Now, what we've been advocating with MB, they've finished the consultation under the building code, is we just have to remove lead from plumbing products that deal with drinking water. Now, we're very hopeful in the next month or two, they'll actually make a ruling. But if they align with Australia, that'll occur in September 2025. And we just don't understand why it would take so long to make that ruling.
Right. So if I go into a bathroom outlet, a Mitre 10, anything that sells taps, is there no way that I can know pre-purchasing if these are a safer tap or not?
So some of the products at a Plumbing World, Myco's or Bunnings or Mitre 10 will have watermark. And my best advice is look for the watermark or ask for the watermark, because you know that product at least has gone through the Australian verification process. And so, you know, we're a small market in New Zealand. We sell a lot of product that's also sold in Australia. That is your best advice. The next advice is talk to your plumber. He knows the brands, he knows the quality brands, and he'll know the ones to avoid.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now, you say in your press release that you're hoping the government will go ahead with its current proposal to lower the lead content limit in plumbing products available in New Zealand to 0.25%, effectively lead-free, right? So I was wondering, obviously numbers aren't relative, but the serious nature of numbers can be. In other words, when someone says, oh, that's expensive, that's relative, you know? So if we wanted to lower it to 0.25%, which is what you've said in your press release, what are they currently? Like, what's the average that they are currently, to give us an understanding as to how much of an issue this is?
Look, they can be 1, 2, 3. They can be right up to double digits lead content, right? And the higher the lead content, the more chance you've got of leaching it. Look, the Australian Commerce Commission has ruled that 0.25 can be deemed as zero lead because it's the margin of error. So it's so infinite amount of lead. They're ruling that 0.25 will be zero lead. Now, I'm very hopeful that MB will take that action as well. If we don't, it'll even be worse because we'll end up the dumping ground for products.
Right. Yeah, right. So in other words, other countries that bring those legislations in, all of a sudden they'll have 1 million taps they need to get rid of, and they turn up on our doorstep.
So most of North America, Canada, and parts of Asia are already down this track. So we've been slow to realise the health risks.
I'm interested as well, and I just so you know, I ask all of the people who come on board here who represent either like a group of people. I'm always interested where their funding comes from, because it often tells us about, you know, what, not saying this is you obviously, but where their agenda is. So the master plumbers, etc., where do you guys get funded from? Like, how do you pay your bills?
Well, we get to our funding predominantly comes from membership. So we're a voluntary membership organisation, and we provide advocacy, and we also provide member services for businesses across New Zealand. We do get sponsorship, and that's including from tapware manufacturers and manufacturers. Some of those sponsors aren't in complete agreement with our strategy on that. That's completely fine, right? we're here to protect New Zealand's plumbing's used to sit for a long time, Pat, under health, right? And fundamentally, we deal with health, drinking water, waste and removal, and gas and drain laying, right? But our job is to provide an environment that isn't third world, that also gives people safe drinking water and safe removal of waste. And so we have to make a strong stance against that.
Yeah, I guess to just cover off this base completely to do with your guys' position is because your membership is made up of plumbers and gasfitters and drainlayers. So would it be fair to say you represent primarily them? So I guess, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is the case or I think this, but there might be some people out there saying, well, you guys just want to get your members more work and more that sort of thing. So what can you tell the public to assure us that this is being driven from a place of care for the public rather than more business for your members?
Yeah. So first and foremost, we're about 3,500 plumbers short. We don't need any more work in New Zealand.
That's true. Yeah, it's hard to get one. Yeah, completely.
So having a relationship with the plumber is nearly as important as having a relationship with your partner or your wife, because you need to make sure you've got access when you do need one. This has been driven from our members around the concern that they were getting given product from consumers that they didn't know when they were installing it, they were providing a health environment for that consumer. And that didn't sit well with our members, okay? Because, look, at the end of the day, we're going to leave that property and know that, we're looking after. The most vulnerable in the lead contamination is our children that are under 5 age, and particularly our bottle-fed babies. So it's our most vulnerable New Zealanders that are at risk. And I don't think any plumber wants to go to work and deliver a service that is actually affecting the health. And so that risk was too high for us. And we got great support across our membership around this.
Yeah. Finally, you finish up your press release by saying, we know many regions still have old cast iron water mains with lead joints. Infrastructure spend is urgently needed to replace this outdated pipeline. Lead poisoning is a serious matter. Surely it's time to make our drinking water safe. As a political commentator, as a commentator in general, that does make me think directly of Three Waters. And it does make me think of the conversation going on right now. Because I do think about this idea, and I guess what I'm doing is I'm sort of making a thought out loud, and then you're welcome to either respond or not respond to it. Okay, up to you. Is that there's going to be some places down here in the deep south, we talk about Clutha next door to us needing something like 30 million or 300 million to fix up their infrastructure. They can't do it. Like, there's no way that those ratepayers can afford that bill. What happens out there when these areas that need this infrastructure upgrade can't actually afford it? Is that therefore a national crisis akin to a natural disaster that, in your opinion, you need to get people like central body, however that works, to get involved, because this is actually a national health crisis, as opposed to each council being like, no, you look after your own. No, you look after your own. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, look, well, fundamentally, I don't think Three Waters is going to fix each individual council, right? We know we've got an infrastructure issue. That's with planning, it's with roads, it's with water pipe. Look, I'm in Wellington, Pat. Every time I walk down Lambton Quay, the water main blows, right?
Yeah.
But those same people that are trying to get elected to say that they're going to fix the pipes have been on the council for decades and not done anything about the pipes and put all the funding into glory projects, right? Look, it isn't sexy. It's in the ground. It's ripping out the roads, putting orange cones up to get you safe drinking water. We haven't committed, councils across the country haven't committed to infrastructure. Now, whether the government comes in and takes all their assets or the government provides financial support to support infrastructure, I don't care. Just fix the bloody pipes, right? Do it however you want, but make sure that they have to test their water so it's safe. And when they find lead pipes, lead joints that are leaching into the system, make them replace them, right? The whole political nonsense, we'll have another argument for 3 years and nothing will happen.
I guess that's a good thing, that at least there seems to be, even if you're saying it needs to be quicker, there seems to be, if they align themselves with Australia, at least that's an end date. Even though you think it should be quicker, at least that would be something.
Oh, look, I talked to Wellington Water, just because I'm in the region, I know there's some issues. They said, well, we're quite aware of the infrastructure being 80 years old with lead joints all through it. Well, you've been knowing about that for 50 years, and
Yeah.
you've sat on your ass and not done anything about it. Get off your ass and prioritise the health, and so I don't know, we've got to link health to the infrastructure, and I don't think that is happening across councils.
Yeah.
And then maybe they should be liable. What happened at Waitariti was a national disgrace, right? And so they still haven't fixed the infrastructure that service that system. And they're trying to put that all on the taps and the plumbing products, where there's always going to be some blame on the infrastructure as well.
It's really interesting. Chief Executive Greg Wallace from Master Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers New Zealand. Hey, thanks for joining us, man. It was really interesting. I think it adds a very interesting dynamic to the other conversation to do with legislation. But I also think you're right that it's not a very sexy, not that you've said it this way, but it's not a very sexy message to tell ratepayers as an incoming mayor, by the way, your rates are going to go up because we have to fix the infrastructure, but somehow it has to get fixed. And I guess that's the conversation for the politicians to get in. But thank you for your conversation with, I guess, the warnings of what the infrastructure is today.
I really appreciate the time, Pat. It's really great to be on the platform.